Hey fellow viewers, welcome back to another video. Today I want to discuss K20 versus K24. That's a big thing in the K-Series world. It's almost a war with each other. Which one's better, which one should I get? And I'm not really going to be talking about which one's better. I will put my personal remarks in there if you want to hear it. But it's more or less what fits you. What is the best option for you, and what should you pick? So maybe you want to get a K-Series, or you're going to get a car with a K-Series, and you just don't know which one to go for because they sound really cool. Both of them sound great. Which ones to get and which ones not to get. A lot of this video, a lot of information I got from many sources, lots of forums, Wikipedias. And then a big help, which I will show some graphs up on screen every once in a while from Driving for Answers, the YouTube channel, the iconic engine series. Probably seen his stuff, very, very good stuff. So some of the graphs I will be showing will be from his YouTube channel. If I can remember, I'll put a link down below so you can go check him out. He's a really knowledgeable guy. I learned a lot from that guy. So if you guys are new to the channel, Project Radium, welcome back. This is my 09 Honda Civic Si. It has a K20 Z3 in there. Don't worry, I'm not biased to the K20. I do understand the K20 is cool as well. So today we're going to go in depth on what are some differences and what is the best prime examples for both things, and what you should want, maybe. And again, this is a broad thing. There are many outliers. So if I say, you know, this is good for naturally aspirated, and then someone goes, well, this is good for naturally aspirated. Yeah, I know that, but I'm just saying as a broad term for beginners, someone that doesn't know and is trying to make that decision. So this is a broad term thing. So welcome to the channel. Let's get into this. So this is kind of be all over the place, but we're really going to be talking about the K20 first. Kinda, not really. We're going to just bounce between. I'll try to make it as clear as possible. So we're going to really start with the K20. So the K20 was first made. I'm not going to go crazy in depth on specs, but there will be specs in this video sprinkled throughout the whole thing just because you need to know that stuff to make your decisions. The K20 was born in 2001, and it was born from the F20C, which was made in the S2000. If you don't know, that motor was revolutionary. Revs to about 9,000 RPMs. It was crazy. It was the grandfather or the father of the K20, for example. So then the K20 came out first in Type Rs and in Japan, in the European model, the market, and then it finally came to the States in 2002. Not something that you really need to know. I just wanted to let you know. 2002, first years, USA got the K20s. So that's that. And we are not going to be talking about the K20C in this video. The K20C is its own kind of separate entity. It is still a K20, but it is the one in the new Type Rs, the direct field injection. They're turbocharged. They're just a lot different. So we're not talking about that one in this video. We're talking about these guys here. So the K20 has the same philosophy, if you will, as the B16 from back in the day. The grandfather of the K20, if you will, and the K24 has the same philosophy as the B18 from back in the day. So they're kind of like that. You can compare them in that way if you know those old motors. If you don't, you can just skip past that part. So, for example, the K20, its philosophy is really high revs, rev happy, high horsepower per liter, and pretty lightweight. That's the philosophy that they went for the K20, and they kept that pretty well. That's exactly what this thing is. And for the K24, the philosophy is still higher red line than a normal car, but just not as high, for sure. So highest red line, torquey and pretty beefy. Really reliable, bulletproof, and torquey. So they aren't as lightweight, they aren't as rev happy, and not as much high horsepower per liter, per se, as the 20. Something very important to also know is even if an engine stamp says K20 on it or K24, not all are the same. And in fact, most K-Series motors are all different. There's only a few things that all of them have in common, and here's one thing that are all in common. All K20s are a square design, meaning it has 86 millimeters of bore and 86 millimeters of stroke. So it's a square design, and that's all K20s have that thing. K24s are all an under square design, meaning they have 87 millimeters of bore and 99 millimeters of stroke, a lot. So more bore and more stroke, giving it more torque. That's what gives the K24 more sturdy, more torque, all that stuff. And there are two categories for the K20 and the 24 that we will split up in this video, that being performance models and economic models. And most K20s and 24s are economic models. Most of them you see out in the world are economic models. Your grandma's Accord is an economic model one, you know. 90%, okay, maybe not that high, but very high percentage of K-series you will see around are economic, not performance, and we will split those up and list them out so you know which ones you want and which ones to avoid with a 10-foot pole, because even though it says K-series on there, does not mean it's what you think it is. So coming into the the K20 performance models here we have, and I will put a graph up on screen so you can see what I'm saying, because I'm not going to list the power numbers because it's on the graph that he put out. So performance K20s are the K20A, which came in like the type R's, like basically all around. That is your legendary K20 with the most power, the highest compression, 11.5 to 1 to like 11.7 to 1. Crazy high compression. Next is the K20A2, which came in the early years of the RSX Type S's. That's what you get here in the States. And the European model, the early European model Type R's as well. So that's the K20A2. Next is the K20Z1, which came in the later years of the RSX Type S's. It had a little more power. It was a little more refined. So if you want a Type S RSX, go with the one with the K20Z1, so the later models. I don't know my RSXs as well, so I can't tell you exactly what year that is. And it also came in another one, but it was really similar. The K20Z3, which again is the one in here, that came in the 8th Gen SI and the Canadian version of that, basically. The Acura CSX Type S, I think. So basically just the 8th Gen only. And the K20Z4, which was another later year of a European Type R. But those are the only K20s that are worth your salt. All other K20s are performance and should not be touched. So if your K20 that you were looking to go get or want aren't those badges, you don't want it. Again, all performance K20s are high compression. They are all 11 to 11.7 to 1 compression. Very high compression. That's what gives them the really rev-happy high revs that makes them a blast to drive, is that really high compression. That's insane compression. And again, economy K20s are every other K20. I'll put a graph up. I'm not going to read them out because there's a lot of them. Anything else that has K20 in front of it and doesn't have those letters or numbers behind it are not a good one to have for your tuner car. Alright, coming into K24s, our performance K24s, there are even less of them. The K24A is a really good one. It comes in the JDM Odyssey Absolute, which is hilarious. So the JDM minivan, and the Accord Type S over in Japan as well. So that's a really good one. The legendary K24A2, which comes in the Acura TSX here in America. That's the motor I really want to get for this girl here at some point. In the K24A3, which came in the European Accord and the Australian and New Zealand Accord Euro. That's it. So only the K24A, the A2, and the A3 are the only 24s you even want to mess with. All other K24s are economy. And yes, that includes the 9th Gen SI, the K24Z7, and I will get into that in a little bit on why that's technically an economy K24. I think that's the only kind of exception I'll give if you want to get an economy K series rather than a performance, because that's a really loose term for that one to be economy because it's pretty performance oriented. But I will go into why that is the way it is. And all performance K24s have slightly less compression than the 20 because it's just more torquey. It doesn't have that rev happiness that the K20s have, so it doesn't need that much. And that all K24s, the performance ones, have around 10.5 to 1 compression rather than 11 to 11.7. So there's quite a bit less compression there. It's less responsive, if you will. So I'm comparing stock to stock here, and less punchy on the high end for sure. Coming into some differences between like performance models and economic models that I won't get out, just kind of lay out a little bit here. I'm not going to go super in depth on. Is one is cranks. Crankshafts are different on eco and performance. Both economic and performance have forged crankshafts, but one thing being performance is beefier and they are counterbalanced, counterweighted. The cranks are counterweighted for the performance ones when the eco ones are not, and that's something that you want when you're in the high revs, that's for sure, especially on a K20, and that's the same with the 20 and the 24. The pistons and connecting rods are different on the performance and economic ones. Beefier, thicker, stronger. They're both cast, but they just are different, of course. And again, that is from the 20 and the 24. And it's different. One big thing as well that performance K series have that economic ones do not is under piston oil squirters. That's a big deal. Keeps your stuff cool from underneath. It really helps longevity of your motor. So that's another huge reason you do want those under piston oil squirters. It's a big deal. I would love to know if the 9th gen K24 Z7 has under piston oil squirters. I don't know that actually. I think that would be really interesting to know. Since they're technically an eco motor, I wonder if it doesn't have that, but I don't know, so I'm not going to take a guess for you guys. Cylinder heads are different from the eco versions, and this is from 24 to 20. And the heads on the K series is really where things go wild and why they are so amazing at what they do. The heads have an amazing design, and the whole motor is an amazing design. Truly is. But the K20 heads are different than a 24, because this is where their main differences lie, rather than, of course, the block is a different deal here. But heads are a big deal. iVTEC on performance and iVTEC on economic K series are very different. VTEC on economic models suck. It's not what you're thinking it is. It's obviously used for economic purposes. It's used to have emissions very low, to keep the motor very lean, and you're in the high RPMs to slightly add a little more fuel and a little more air, just enough to keep it from starving itself, basically. And there are only 2 cam lobes on the camshafts, rather than 3 that a performance K series has. And on a performance K series, both camshafts open up, so the exhaust and the intake side open up, giving you that VTEC roar. And that is the main reason why the 9th gen SI K24 is an economic K series rather than a performance oriented one, because of the head. The 9th gen head, they went with a lot different of a design that many people hate and that's why it's kind of been the ugly duckling of the 24s. Is because they went with a integrated downpipe instead of regular headers, and that made the CFM, or the flow for the head, to go way down. And they also only had VTEC on one cylinder. They only had it on the intake side and not the exhaust side. So it's not true VTEC, and that's why anytime you're hearing you hear VTEC on those things, you don't hear them. I mean, they have a light called a dummy light when VTEC's engaged is you just don't hear it or feel it as much. It doesn't hit as hard because you only have one VTEC cam, which it's a very odd choice. So it's kind of been the one that's been resented from the community. But that is the big reason why that one is an economy K-Series rather than a true performance K-Series, because of the VTEC cams that's not true VTEC and that weird integrated head thing, because all other K-Series have, not, I wouldn't say all, but our performance ones are normal headers, you know. It's not an integrated downpipe, so the CFM or the flow through the head stays very high. I don't know why they did that. I'm not knocking the 9th Gen SI either. I've had reviews and them on my channel before, and they are cool cars and they're fun to drive. I'm just stating engine-wise that it's kind of inferior in that aspect. The K20, another thing they have going for them, the 20 and the 24, is their heads design is crazy. The valve angle is very narrow. It's almost making a tight V rather than this. So it's a straighter line letting more air in. And obviously, if you look at like an Indy car or some race cars that have just straight up, you know, the straighter up the valve angle is, the more straight air can go in. I mean, the steeper the valve angle is, the more of a straight line it is, the more air can get in there faster, you know, more air, more power, you know what I mean? Rather than it being super far like this. That's why if you look at a B-Series motor, if you know what I mean, they're very low. They're very sunken heads. They're not very tall, and they're very wide. Rather than K-Series, since they had to angle it up like this, they're very tall. They're pretty skinny, but they're very tall. That's why most of the time when you see a K-swap in an old like EG or an EK hatch, the hood has to be rised. You'll see hood risers, because the engine is so much taller. That head sticks up very high because they have to. Another thing that's really nice about it, too, is the heads are completely... You could totally disassemble, take them apart. So if a part goes wrong in the head, you could take it apart, put it back together, fix that part, put it back together, rather than trashing the whole head like a B-Series had to do. It's just a really good design. It has roller arms as well, rather than the pads the old ones had. It's just for very efficient, high RPMs. And this is for the 20 and the 24, again. But not the Eco ones. Eco ones don't have these functions. And also, VTEC in the performance models have VTC, which is variable timing. So it changes either advances or retards your cam angle in VTEC, which is insane, because the I in VTEC stands for intelligence VTEC, or intelligent VTEC. It gets pretty advanced, and of course Eco ones don't even have VTC, so stay away from Eco if you want to do any tuning on your K-Series. I know I've harped on it a lot. I just wanted to show you why you shouldn't, rather than spend tons of money for no reason on an Eco motor. K20 heads also have, for the most part, most of the time, of course there's always some outliers, because most of the time Type Rs change things up, but K20 heads, for the most part, have bigger exhaust and intake ports than a K24 does, so more airflow, again, because you got to remember the K20 has very high compression, so they need to bring in lots of air for that high compression to keep it revving and keep it happy. So they did all they can on the K20 to give lots of airflow. So that means the K20, for the most part, had bigger ports on the head than the 24 did. Another big thing is K20 and 24 heads have huge valves, especially for stock motors that aren't super expensive. They're very big valves, especially for a 4-cylinder as well. K20 heads have a intake valve at 35 millimeters and an exhaust valve at 30 millimeters. These are big valves and are still one of the bigger ones to this day for like production, normal mass-produced production cars. They're very big. And just so you know, the B16 and B18s had 33 on the intake and 28 on the exhaust, and those were still big. So the K20 just has some huge ones. And I mean, even the K24 has bigger ones on some. I think it's only the Type R head on the K24, but the K24 has an intake at 36 millimeters and an exhaust at 31. Due to the bigger bore, they could put bigger valves in there, but it's insane. They have some really big valves. And lastly, I want to say, comparing Eco to Performance on the K-Series is Performance K-Series have long tube aluminum intake manifolds. I'm not sure you can see this, kinda, maybe. They're aluminum. This is a RBC intake manifold that came with the Z3. They are really good. They sacrifice a little bit of low-end power for a lot more high-end. It just lets in a lot more air. It lets it cool off a little bit because they're a lot longer. And it just gives it more power. It really does. An easy mod you could do to these is if you get a K24, you could swap this with a the Type R one, like an FD2 or something, and you'll make 5 horsepower or something just doing that. Or you can get a bigger one from Skunk 2 or something. But it's a big deal. That's a big difference between Eco and Performance is the intake manifold. The intake manifold on the Eco ones are usually plastic and they're short runners, so it gives them slightly more torque for eco-friendly purposes. And that's yet another reason the 9th Gen SI is an Eco motor. It came with that plastic Eco intake manifold, and it's really bad. And VTEC is a lot more pronounced once you swap that. If you go back on my channel, I have a link down below. I reviewed a 9th Gen SI that was full bolt-on with this intake manifold on it, the RBC intake manifold on it, and it did change it quite a bit. So that is a mod you can do to it. Because again, 9th Gens are 9th Gen SIs came with that motor, so they have to work with what they got. So really coming into now what I think you should do with rather K20 or 24. You know, I got you some specs. I showed you which ones you want to get, what power they're pushing in that graph that I'm going to put down below, and differences between the Eco and the Performance. I'll give you my advice on what I think the K20 does very well and what the 24 does very well. So I'll give you some nice pros and cons, I believe, in my experience. I've driven both. I own the 20, but I also live with people that own the 24, and I've driven other people's 24s and other people's 20s, so I've gotten good idea and feel for what I want and what I think they're both good for. So let's start with the K20 here. So with the K20, obviously it has higher compression. These ones are lighter weight, and they do super well in the high RPMs for racing or just hard driving, hard canyon carving, cruising with buds, and VTEC up high. You know, these motors do super well with that, and even with that lack of torque that the K20 has, because obviously it has a lack of torque, it's not as beefy down below. If you're driving them correctly, at the high range of RPMs while you're racing, or you know, going quick on back roads, canyon carving, you're not going to notice that lack of power, that lack of torque, because the power numbers are very, very similar. You're not going to notice that lack of torque, because in some cases, you know, sometimes the K20 has more power than the 24 for horsepower, and when in those high RPMs, you're using your horsepower, you know. You're not going to notice that anymore. It's really once you start slowing down and you're doing in-town stuff, you're coming from stop to stop, that you're going to notice that K24 is lacking in its department a little bit. And it's not even that it's a turd. It's just you might lose some gas mileage because you have to put your foot down a little more, and you're not going to be winning no drag races. You know what I mean? You don't have that push you in the seat kind of thing, and you also don't have that bragging thing like my car's so fast your head's gonna be stuck to the back of the seat, because that's just not the way it works. These things have almost no thrills under VTEC. It's horrible. But in those high RPMs, if you're driving it correctly and doing what the motor was literally made for, which is why it has so high compression and why it's so lightweight and why it wants to get thrown around if you're in those high RPMs, you're not gonna notice that no torque, and it's going to be an absolute riot. And I personally think the tone of the K20 with a good exhaust on it and everything sounds better and just more racy. And I love the sound of the K20 a lot. And again, like keeping up with that, keeping a K20 naturally aspirated, with better cams, a port and polished head, or keeping it stock with just bolt-ons, or just giving it what it wants to be naturally aspirated to rev super high, giving it a better oil pump. It is so much fun, and you're gonna have so much fun with it. If you want to get a car like this that's super rev happy in just pure Honda heritage, that you don't want to do too much to, you don't want to sink tons and tons of money into it, this is it, man. Go full bolt on. And if the lack of torque does not bother you, and I think you'd get over it pretty quick, just for how much fun it is. Because I mean, again, it's not sluggish. It's super rev happy. So all you got to do is stomp on that gas a little bit and crack that VTEC, and then you're hauling. So I mean, if that's what you want to do, it's awesome. Or if you do want to go boosted, get something like a Precision that has very high RPM spooling. You know, it doesn't spool down low because again, torque's not here. So if you can get something that complements with the motor very well, then you're going to have a lot of fun with not a lot of lack of reliability. Now, I don't say you should boost these because of such high compression. Adding boost to these is kind of a bad idea, just because, again, they have such high compression. They're 11-to-1 compression to start, you know, and some are higher. So it's like you can either go full bolt-on or build it for naturally aspirated, and you're going to have so much fun with this car. Or you could throw a turbo on it and blow it up pretty quick because it's such high compression. That's going to happen. Pre-detonation is going to be going on. Or you could sink tons of money into it to lower the compression, and then you're kind of, I don't know, defeating the purpose of what the K20 was. You might as well go for the 24 at that point. And again, we'll get into that in a second. So I don't know, if you want an A build or full bolt-on, just have some fun as a daily driver, this K20 is for you. If you want pure racing heritage, I can't say it enough, it is fun. Okay, so I decided to get a little closer because I chose the day to record when they're using chainsaws. It's been like 15 minutes, me sitting here on this last point, and he won't stop. So I'm just going to tell you a little closer. Another big thing with K20s that I like to tell people as well is the K20 heads just flow better. For the most part, again, don't be all keyboard warrior and tell me that this one K24 head is better than, you're right, sure. For the most part, K20 heads flow better. For performance ones, of course, that's what I'm talking about, but they flow better. And you can't go wrong with the K20 head. They're fantastic. And the blocks are more free-flowing. They're better for higher revs, of course. That's what I've been saying this whole video. And these give you options to reach like 9,000 RPMs pretty easy. If you have the K20A2 or the Z1 from the Type S RSX, just getting bolt-ons and Hondata, congratulations. Go to 9,000 RPMs. You know, with mine, I could rev to 8,600. I can't quite get to 9,000 because I don't have the Type S oil pump. It's not as good, and I just don't want to start my engine of oil. But 8,600 RPMs, that's insane, you know. And I could easily get to 9 by just getting a different oil pump. It's just like you can go places with RPMs that the 24 just can't. Okay, so you can go places that K24 can't reliably or cheaply reach. I'm not saying the K24 can't, not cheaply and not reliably, go to 9,000 RPMs. It's going to blow. It's not made for that. The stroke is just too long and the bore's too wide for it to go that high. And meaning, what's super cool with these is they're made to rev so high is you could use the full range. I mean, my car pulled power all the way to 86, you know. It's not like I'm revving to 86 and I reached max power at 78. The K20s keep going on the power for a very long time. It's not useless revs. It's power throughout, and it's extremely fun all the way through when you get into VTEC. You know, there's not that torque, so once you hit that VTEC, all the rest of your RPMs, for example, I get VTEC at 4100 on here. So from 41 all the way to 86, I got VTEC, and it's all usable, and it all ramps up throughout the whole power band, and it's just so fun. It's exhilarating, it's fun, and it's made to do it, so you're not going to have to worry about it just blowing on you when you're at 8,000 because you're worried about it. And another big thing here in America, for example, I'm saying it because in America here, K20s are just more plentiful. Again, performance-wise, or more plentiful than the 24s. Performance 24s are more money most of the time, and they're just more rare because there's a lot less of them. Your best bet here in America for a 24 that was local is the K24A2, which came in the TSX. But they're a lot of money because people know that's the only one really around here. If you want to get a hold of another K24 for performance, you have to import one or find one already imported, and that's a little sketchy sometimes. But over here, they made K20s over here with the SIs and with the RSXs and the Type S's. So there's a lot more K20s over here, so they're cheaper and more readily available. So that's something you want to take into consideration. That K20s are everywhere, and you could find them quite many places. And if you can't find the motor, then you could find a rear-ended RSX Type S or something, and just take the motor from it or something. You know what I mean? So that's a big one. Also, I just want to say as well, K20 heads flow from about 290 to 300 CFM at stock. You know, higher the number, the better on that one. And that's stock. That's not ported and polished. K24 heads, for the most part, flow around 270 to 280. Again, no slouches, but they just don't rev quite. They don't flow quite as much because the ports are smaller. And again, you could port those out too, but you could also port out the K20 ones to get even bigger. So just K20s rev a little better on the heads because they're made to do it, you know. All right, so that's my thoughts on the K20 here. Let's get into the K24. A lot of K20 24s here. I get confused sometimes. So with the K24, why would you want a K24, and why do that? You know, the K20 sounds good. Well, you can see it does very different things. So with the K24, it's lower compression, and that's compared to the K20 because it's funny to call it low compression. 10.5 to 1 is not low compression, but compared to that and the bigger bore, it means it's just more torquey. Again, as I've said a million times, it means getting around town or stop to stop is easier. It's more fun, and it's a little more eventful. You know, pushing your head in the seat and just having a little more fun is better. It's more punchy, and you're going to be getting better gas mileage in the city because you're not going to have to bury your foot in the pedal every time, and you're not even going to have to get close to VTEC at all just to get to speed easily. Like, it's just going to be better, and it's going to get to speed faster from a slower speed. For example, if you're cruising on the back roads, you guys have to come to a stop. There's a deer in the way or something, so you guys have to come to like 15 miles an hour and then take off again once the deer go away or something. In the K20, you're going to be like, you're going to have to downshift twice and try to get up when the K24 is just going to get there faster. You know, that torque comes in handy in so many ways. You know, I mean, when you're canyon carving and you're getting the high RPMs or you're racing, that torque you're not going to notice just because you're in those high RPMs. The K20 is going to be neck and neck with you. But in just normal average situations like stoplights, city driving, laws, or something comes out in front of you and you need to get going really fast, that's where the 24 and that torque is just so nice, you know. And it's more drag racy, you know, from slow rolls or from stops. The 20's not winning any drag races, and the 24 you're not going to be winning tons, but I mean, you're probably going to win quite a bit more. There's more there, you know. For the most part, K24s have about 100 and high 150 torque to like 170 something foot-pounds of torque. So there's quite a bit there. When the 20s have like 130 to 140, and those are high RPM torque, My max torque is at 7,000 RPMs, you know, and on a K24A, that max torque is at like 44, you know. It's usable. It's there. Another big thing, the K24 responds very well to boost. That's the one that everyone wants to boost, you know. So if you're looking to not daily drive this or ruin your daily driver by boosting it and going wild with mods, K24 is the way to go. It is obviously, again, it's beefier, you know. It's thicker, there's more torque there, and the compression is lower, so you could afford to boost it on its stock internals and push some pretty good power rather than taking a huge risk and turboing an 11-to-1 compression car where you might detonate and just blow shit up. The 24 responds very good to boost, and it gives you more torque and more high-end power. When you hear boosted K-Series, it's probably a 24 because you could just throw something on there and it's going to do super good. And it's going to be reliable. And again, disclaimer, there's tons of people that boost the K20s and they do completely fine, but the threshold, it's a little more sensitive. And you can't push just quite as much because it's a little more sensitive, higher compression, you know. It's just a little scarier, you know. And again, this kind of sounds like a diss to the 24, but it's not. It's just kind of true. And like as I've been saying, the K24 heads just aren't as free flowing, and the blocks aren't made to rev quite as high as the 20s. So you may reach only 8,000 RPMs at your max RPMs that you'd want to reach safely on the K24, and most don't even go to that number. They're reaching like 78 is usually, I see a good line for what I see people shifting at with their 24s is 78, which, you know, is not a low number. But, you know, compared to 9,000, it's a low number, you know what I mean? So it's like, and they just don't have full use of that power band. Like, again, like I said, most people shift to 78, but some could rev to 8,000 or maybe 81. But you're not really making much power by that point. You hit the top of 7,000 and you're really flattening out that power, and you're kind of just revving it to rev it, and you're not making power at that point. You've plateaued at this point because the K24s don't make heaps and heaps and heaps of power all the way to the red line. They kind of reach a certain point, like high sevens, where they flatten out, and then you're just revving it to rev it, and you might actually fall on that dyno graph a little bit. So it's just not full power band power all the time like the K20 has. But again, K24 is usable under VTEC, which I cannot say the same for this. You know, it's usable under 4,000 and going from town to town. Stop to stop, stoplight to stoplight. It's so much more usable. And so I gotta say, like, if you wanna build something, you wanna make a race car, you wanna make a drag car, you wanna do this stuff, you wanna put thousands in to a non-naturally aspirated car, K-Series, I'd say go K24. If you want to build a race car, if you want to have a good daily, with just simple mods, go K20, you know, because they're more readily available in America here, you know. It's going to be hard to find, unless you could find a K24 swapped something. For sure, that's pretty cool, go do it. It's just because most of the fun cars here in America are K20s, and you're not going to, it's going to be harder to find the 24, and just do it, man. It's fun, I promise you it's fun. And if you want to get a race car that's naturally aspirated, a screamer that revs really high, go K20 as well, you know. But I'd say if you could find a K24, like if you want to build something crazy and you want to go big, go K24. Or if you get lucky and you find an RSX or an SI swapped with a 24 and it already, pull the trigger, go ahead. It's going to be a fun time. You can't go wrong either way. Both these motors, both these family of motors, the 24 and the 20, are fantastic. Again, performance models, let me bang it in your head, performance models are extremely fun. And even the 9th Gen SI that I've been dogging on in this video is fantastic. It's super fun. It just doesn't have quite as much thrills with that weird VTEC deal. It's very strange. And last thing I want to talk about before I end this video, because I've been blabbling for a long time, is Frankenstein Builds. Big thing. And sneak peek, that's what's happening to her over here. Frankenstein Builds is when you get a K24 block. Again, performance model. I know I'm banging that in your head, but still. K24 performance model block. Let's say like the K24A2. That's what I want. I'm going through the list for you guys. This is what I want. This is the ultimate beast daily / track car. K24A2 block from the TSX. Plop that in there. And then you get a K20 head and put that on top of the K24 block. So now you have a better, more free-flowing head that can take lots of high RPMs on that head, and you have a sturdier block. So you're basically making a K20 stroker at that point, and it's the ultimate. It really is. So if you can get that, you can get a Type S oil pump from the K20A2, put it on the K24, get head studs and a good head gasket, and make sure you port and polish everything up there nice, and put your head on, make sure you're good, make sure everything's going nice, get a tune, congratulations. At that point, and that is the most simple way to do it. At that point, you have a K2420 or a K2024 that could rev to, you're probably only going to rev to 8,000, but still 8,000 reliably, because you got the oil pump and the free-flowing head, and you got the torque and power of the K24 as well. So you're probably going to make more high end power, and you're going to make probably 40 or 50 more foot-pounds of torque at the low end, not the high end. So that's what I'm going to be doing to this one. I'm going to be getting the either the K24A or K24A2, and putting my K20 Z3 head on top of that. And again, ARP head studs, head gasket, Type S oil pump, and put my bolt-ons that I already have. So my RBC intake manifold, of course, with my short ram, my header, and my exhaust with on data, and that'll be it, and keep my 6-speed transmission I already have in there. It's going to be fantastic. That is the ultimate daily. It really, truly is. And from there, you can go absolutely wild. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I blabbered on for a lot. I hope you guys understood what I was trying to say. It's a fun world, man. The K-Series is truly something special. It is truly my favorite. I've driven D-Series, I've driven H-Series, and I've driven B-Series, and now I've driven K-Series. I've not driven J-Series, but, that's kind of its own thing. That's a 6-cylinder. This is the 4 cylinders that I'm talking about. K-Series by far is my favorite, for sure. They're just by far the most technologically advanced, of course. I mean, they just are. And I have even driven the turboed cars for the 10th and 11th gens. They just don't have the same feeling. You can't go wrong with either. If you want a 20 or 24, you're not going to be disappointed. You may wish you had more torque, or you may wish, if you have the torque, that you wish you had the high end of the 20. You're always going to be missing something, unless you do the Frankenstein build. But you can't go wrong with either. It's absolutely fantastic. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you learned something, hit that like button. I don't care. Hit that dislike button if you didn't learn anything, or if you were distracted by the chainsaw man or the banging man of a hammer. Comment down below what you thought, what you feel, if I got something wrong. If you want to add more, got questions, let me know. I always like hearing from you guys. I appreciate it. I start a new job in a few days. I am extremely nervous. So new content coming, hopefully, on that pretty soon. I thank you all for watching very much. Let's get to 500 subscribers, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.